And we're live with another episode of Drafting Lessons, the DLF TV show, where every single week I grab a guest and we go through a Dynasty mock draft. Today, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently than we have the past couple of weeks. We're going to actually be doing our first Dynasty rookie draft. It's going to be a 12 team, 4 rounds of just rookies, pure rookie draft. And I thought, who better to bring on than Jesse Reeves himself? How's it going, man?
What's up, dude? I'm actually really excited that you asked me to do this because, quarantine has not been kind to me over the past 2 weeks. So we're just chilling, dude. I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here.
Hey, man, we just got to, just keep churning. We got to provide a distraction to the people. And with rookies right now, I think that's a fantastic distraction.
100%. 100%.
All righty. So, Jesse, we talked a little bit before, but it looks like we're going to be doing 2 4-round rookie mock drafts. The first one is going to be at the 103 position, 103, 203, 303, 403, and then we're going to do a second one at a later spot in the first round, and so that gives us a different mix of players to draft from. Kind of gives us more players to talk about with rookies and different wide receivers and running backs, and maybe get into some of these tight ends as well here too. So. With 3 here, do you have any kind of general strategy for the 103? Talking to the people who have that right now, and they're kind of wondering that there might be out of the first tier with at least Jonathan Taylor and probably either CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, or is the 103 still part of that tier for you?
Yeah, 103 is probably still part of that tier. I think you're going to be able to get some good value there. And especially if it's on one quarterback, I think you're sitting in a really good place where you're going to be able to get a high-level skill position player, running back or wide receiver, depending on where you go. There's still going to be some really solid names sitting there with really good production profiles. So it's going to be a little bit more, it's like you said, it's not going to be those top guys. Maybe one slips. Maybe you get that rando guy who sucks and he has the 101 and he takes, J.K. Dobbins or something, and you have two gold mines waiting for you. But like general rule is to just kind of in this early in the pecking order, you kind of let it just come to you. I mean, you always just let the draft happen, but just kind of wait, see how it unfolds, and see who ends up at the 103.
Would you recommend right now trading up to 101 or 102?
Oh no, I don't think with where we are now, not knowing draft capital and landing spots, I don't recommend. So if you're in a league where you're just, it's crazy and you guys are drafting before the actual draft, no, I sit tight and kind of hold because we don't have enough information at the moment. So I feel strongly that at the 103, I'm able to get somebody that's of high value.
Awesome. Yeah, fair enough. So I say we just get right into it.
Let's do it.
All righty. So this is not a super
Dude, I told you. Hey, listen, when I tell you, you let the draft unfold in front of you. Look at that.
The guy who just watched the national championship game and the semifinal game of LSU and Oklahoma had the 101 in this draft.
The diehard middle-aged LSU fan had the 101 in your league. And let me tell you, he did not waste any time putting that selection through.
All righty. So this is not going to be accurate of your one quarterback in 99% of your leagues. So yeah, we're just going to go with it anyway. So Joe Burrow and then Jonathan Taylor went at the 101, 102. So we are chilling right now at the 103 with everybody else. So who's your pick right here, Jesse?
Oh, man, I think the pick has to be – I think it's got to be CeeDee Lamb. I think Jonathan Taylor is in that tier 1 of running backs, and CeeDee Lamb is in that tier 1 of wide receivers. So when in doubt, always go I always like to base my tiers off of guys that that I have kind of formulated into like pockets and buckets of success. And when I have two guys on the board that I have like maybe in the same tier, I kind of go by team construction. And right now, Jonathan Taylor would have been my RB1, and then CeeDee Lamb would have been my wide receiver 1. Both of them would have been in tier 1 of those positions, but Jonathan Taylor is pretty much in the only back that I have in tier 1 right now. With that being said, you kind of shift over and see what you have in your other tiers, and CeeDee Lamb is the guy that I would probably go with there. He's in my tier 1 of wide receivers, and I'm taking him right here at the 103, and I will gladly do that.
So Lamb versus Judy, was that an easy pick for you there between the two wide receivers?
Yeah, for me it is. I think CeeDee Lamb is. I have him in pretty much just the upper echelon of this class, and I think that a lot of it has to do with the projected draft capital as well. He's very much valued as a top 2 wide receiver in this class. I think him and Jerry Jeudy are going to be the two wide receivers that come off the board first. But when you look at both of those guys comparatively, CeeDee Lamb kind of trumps him in everything. Efficiency, we're talking in yards per team pass attempt, 90th percentile, 70th percentile in average college dominator. And so everything that I have on him, production wise, market share wise, breakout age 19, he kind of checks a lot of these boxes, and he does it at a very high level for me. Jerry Jeudy, he does check these boxes. It's not that he doesn't, but he does it at much more of a moderate level. So he's a guy that kind of grades out as more of an average wide receiver. And I know that a lot of the argument for a guy like, or for Jerry Jeudy in particular, is that he played in a crowded Alabama wide receiver group. And that's fine. I'm not saying that he didn't. He did very well when he did have the ball, 2.1 yards per team pass attempt. That's an 80th percentile grade right there for me. But kind of in terms of average college dominator, 40th percentile. And if we look at a really good Peter Howard metric, which is dominator over average, he grades out at about a -7%, which is in the 50th percentile, which means he generally just scored below the average of what everybody else was scoring in terms of average dominator. So that's a really, really good metric that Peter came up with that I actually use for a couple of reasons to show me kind of a baseline of where these guys are at. And he, like I said, he graded in the 50th percentile there, which means he wasn't dominating as hard as these other wide receivers are. And for me, his entire profile just suggests that he has average potential, which isn't bad. I think with the first round draft capital, he's going to have more than enough upside, but he's definitely not a guy I'm considering at the 103, and definitely not a guy that I'm taking over CeeDee Lamb.
That's very well said. And I mean, when you talk about Jerry Jeudy, of course, everybody talks about, the Alabama wide receiver core of him, Devonta Smith, and Henry Ruggs. And that is the reason why, he doesn't have the market share numbers or the dominator ratings or all that stuff that a lot of analytics guys like to look for. And then the film people are just like, you can't base that off of, just a one number whenever he's competing for targets and receptions with two other most likely first round picks as well. So when that comes into a play there for you, is that a huge weight? Is the fact that he's coming off of a team with other first round picks that he's competing with, or are you just not really too worried about that? And his production was his production, and that's that.
No, I mean, I think a lot of other analysts have been presented that same question. Guys like Christopher Bean and Peter Howard as well. They've both done really good studies on why you can't really use that argument, especially for a guy like Henry Ruggs on the lower end or on the wrong end of that scale. A guy who didn't break out, who wasn't able to grab a large portion of that market share there from Alabama. But for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, when we look at the thresholds stat, because that's what dominator rating and things like breakout age are, is they are a dominator. They are a threshold statistic, and Jerry Jeudy did surpass that. It's not that he didn't. So it's always a plus. But when we do look at the entire scope of that Alabama team, it's not. We want to see guys, if you are truly as good as, and it comes down to the value from what I know. So Jerry Jeudy is a good wide receiver, but what other people are telling me is that he's one of the best wide receivers in this class, when in fact there are other wide receivers in this class that have better production profiles, guys like Justin Jefferson, guys like Denzel Mims, guys like Jalen Reagor. So it's not that Jerry Jeudy is not good. Well, I'm not saying that he's not good. I'm saying that we as a community might be overvaluing him comparative to his peers because of what people are telling us his value is. People in the NFL community, people in the actual football community, people in that grind the tape and scouts and stuff. They say he has very elite route running and that he is a very, very good, solid wide receiver. Probably not the most physical wide receiver. Everything that I've seen on him, because I do watch a little bit of film on these guys to get a little bit of a better perspective. And everything that I've seen about him, he's got good hands. He's not the most physical wide receiver, but he's fast. He gets in and out of his breaks very well, and he can run a route. He can run any route that you want him to. But that did not help him achieve being a standout wide receiver with above average metrics at Alabama. And if that offense is so incredibly good, which I do believe it is good, he didn't necessarily stand out in that offense, which probably says more about Jerry Jeudy being a more average wide receiver in a very good offense than it does say about the offense itself, at least from my perspective. So I wouldn't say that's what I would say when the argument comes about. I'm not saying that Jerry Jeudy is bad. I'm saying that he wasn't able to sustain something that tells us he is comparable to the level of wide receiver that everybody seems to think he is right now. And for fantasy purposes, he definitely does not kind of give us more of he doesn't give us a higher ceiling and a higher floor that we can bet on comparative to his peers.
I have nothing more to add. That was very well said. So we're going to move on here. We're going to look at now the second round that we have. And Peter, Peter's in the chat right now. He said, Jesse hates Jerry Jeudy. Weird.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Well, Peter's going to put me on blast here. I do not hate Jerry Jeudy. I do not.
So let me just run down the other players that went after our CeeDee Lamb pick. DeAndre Swift, Jerry Jeudy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Cam Akers, T. Higgins, and Henry Ruggs. That was the end of the first round there. And then Michael Pittman and A.J. Dillon went at the top of the second. So we're now here, the 203. We're looking at Tua and Justin Herbert are still there for quarterbacks. Denzel Mims, Laviska, Zach Moss, Keyshawn Vaughn, Eno Benjamin, AGG, Brandon Ayuk. What are we looking at here, Jesse?
Well, it looks like things at the top of that draft are starting to weed out really, really fast. I know a lot of people said that this is a draft that has a lot of depth, and I don't think that that's necessarily true given what the options that we kind of have here. The guys that I'm pretty much intrigued by, I only see one name that I'm probably looking to take at the 203 here, and he's probably a value, and that's probably Denzel Mims. He's a guy that's really, really shined in the Senior Bowl process, in the combine process as well, and he's somebody that I really think he's cemented himself as kind of a guy that's going to be taken in the late first or the early second. And that's kind of where we see the highest level of hit rates for wide receivers in terms of draft capital and for fantasy purposes as well. And he's got the age adjusted metrics to back him up. I believe he's got an age 19 breakout. He also has a lot of the physical metrics that people have been talking about in terms of height adjusted, weight adjusted, speed score. His 40-yard dash was 4.38, 96th percentile, 115.6 speed score. If you are adjusting for any type of physical metric in any of your models or anything, he's going to grade out very well. I would probably say somewhere in the top 7 of your wide receiver group. Like I said, age 19 breakout, a 42.3 college dominator. He is a guy that just kind of did it at a fairly high level all throughout college, and he really solidified himself as a top level wide receiver in this class. And the fact that you can get him in the second round right now is pretty big. He's probably the last of this for me, he's the last guy that I would consider as a high-end talent that I can get in the second round before that cliff kind of starts to drop and we got to start throwing some darts.
So I'm taking Denzel Mims here for you, but I wanted to ask you this question because honestly, this is something that has kind of perplexed me for basically ever since the combine, and because Mims gained all this hype because of the combine and since the combine, but why was there nothing really, like I'd never even heard his name before the combine? So why all of a sudden now, just because he had a really fantastic athletic performance, that he's now being talked about as potentially a top 5 wide receiver in this class?
Honestly, for what I can say is that his production profile overall was really solid. And the reason why we probably didn't hear much about him is because other people weren't talking about him. And what I mean by that is, I know that sounds like, yeah, duh, nobody was talking about him. That's probably why I didn't hear about him. But the reason why I think we have to kind of wait combine metrics and things like the East-West Shrine game, the Senior Bowl, and everything like that is because even though we don't like to think that teams and franchises can kind of impact the way that our fantasy success happens, we always have to account for that. Because for a perfect example, a guy like Denzel Mims, who has a decent production profile, he averaged 25.1% dominator over his entire college career, his 3 years at Baylor. He is a guy that has everything, and he grades out really, really well among the top end of these wide receivers. I currently have him at wide receiver 5. And he's somebody that, like I said, age-adjusted metrics are going to back him up. Breakout age is going to back him up. But teams and franchises and college football watchers weren't necessarily on him because they looked at him as a one-dimensional wide receiver, a guy who's used in the red zone, a guy who's got a 7-foot wingspan, and who's probably going to be relegated to a big X-style wide receiver in the NFL. He's 6'3", 207 pounds. He's a mammoth, and he's going to be, like I said, he's going to be kind of cast type into being that wide receiver X. He moved around a little bit at Baylor, but he didn't do anything that offered a level of versatility that I think teams really wanted to hype him up over. But we went down to Mobile. He had a really, really good Senior Bowl, went to the combine, flashed some speed, and was able to some burst and some agility as well. And now he's being looked at as a guy who has the physical tools to maybe be a little bit more than that X-style receiver. Maybe he's going to be able to kind of come out and we can throw him into the slot a little bit, see what he's going to do there, see if we can open up his route tree a little bit more. But kind of to backtrack to what I said is when NFL teams start to value these guys and they start to see that, okay, Denzel Mims, he ran a 4.38. Okay, that's elite level for his size and his weight. Teams like speed, and they like speed from a big body X receiver. Look at DK Metcalf. I mean, he went in the second round purely because he's a physical specimen, although he is a good wide receiver as well. But he's a physical specimen. Now, if Denzel Mims shoots up draft boards and he goes to the second round, it's okay to adjust for that. It's okay to be like, okay, well, just because I didn't hear about him before doesn't mean I can't hear about him now. And I should probably adjust for the fact that NFL teams know about him now, because if they know about it and they're willing to pick him in the second round, we have to be willing to adjust the way that we look at our draft boards in fantasy and be like, okay, if Denzel Mims has second round draft cap and Jalen Reagor has third or fourth round draft capital, am I going to spend this early 203 pick on a guy like Denzel Mims, or even maybe the 107, wherever Jalen Reagor went? If am I going to use this 107 on a guy who the league believes in and who has all the entire production profile and now has the draft capital? Am I going to believe in him over a guy who I really, really loved, but now the league doesn't love and they don't believe in him? He still has a chance, but the upside might be a little bit diminished, So for me, I get that question a lot. Hey, why didn't I hear about this guy before? Well, it's probably because you weren't watching college football. It's probably because you didn't care about a guy named Denzel Mims,
That was definitely me. I watched Penn State, and that's about it. And other Big Ten teams as well, too, rooting for them to all lose. Yeah, so I think that's pretty solid. And I think I do agree with you that Denzel Mims does seem to be that guy in the second round that is going to probably have the highest ceiling out of all these other players, minus like the quarterbacks and stuff. But we know how quarterbacks are with scoring and everything. But I do agree with you that, it seems like Denzel Mims is going to have a lot of stuff going his way come draft day, that he's going to be a pretty nice value in the second round, even if it's the early second, like at the 203 here. So I do really like that pick. So we're looking now at the 303. Just to run down the players that got drafted after us: Tua, Justin Herbert, Zach Moss, Laviska, Jalen Hurts, Keyshawn Vaughn, AGG, Eno Benjamin, Quintez Cephas to round out the second round, and then Brandon Ayuk and Bryson Hopkins as the first tight end. So we're looking at least according to this, Anthony McFarland, Donovan Peoples-Jones, KJ Hamler, Thaddeus Moss, Tyler Johnson, Salvin Ahmad, Jared Pinkney, Hunter Bryant, Cole. Is that Komet or is it just Met? I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
It's Komet.
Komet. There should be like an A or something in there. But and Brian Edwards is down there chilling too. I know that you like him a lot. So where are we looking at here for this 303 pick, Jesse?
All right. So right now, for me, it's probably KJ Hamler. I really like the production profile from KJ Hamler, but the fact that we did not get to see him test, and the fact that he didn't really put any metrics or combine metrics or anything like that onto kind of our spreadsheets for that matter. We're kind of forced to play a little bit of a guessing game when it comes to him, and just look at the entire the entirety of his profile. He's an age 19 breakout. I believe that I have in my database. He's a guy that has really, really good age adjusted metrics, averaged about 29.3% dominator over his time at Penn State. And he's also a guy that excuse me while I'm looking through my thing. He's also a guy that grades out really well in efficiency. Average yards per team pass attempt, 2.3, 80th percentile. Like I said, his average college dominator, 29.3. That's an 80th percentile. His average dominator over average, about 0.70, which is in the 70th percentile as well. And then using another Peter Howard big brain statistic, average yards over average, he's in the 80th percentile there with 3.10% or 3.10%, I should say. He grades out very, very well. Just overall, in terms of the production profile that he has comparative to his peers, he grades out very, very highly. And he's somebody that I think that a lot of people are going to not be on because of his height and his weight. And while I pull that up real quick, I know he's a smaller wide receiver, and he's a guy that has really, really good speed, but he doesn't have much else. A lot of people say he suffers from drops. I didn't really see too many of those when I did watch him on film. Not that that's predictive or carries over from college to the pros, or from college to the NFL. But for me, I think a lot of it is going to come down to how teams value him after they haven't seen him test, and whether or not he's going to get an opportunity to kind of show that before he inevitably gets drafted, or hopefully he gets drafted. But he's 5'11", have him listed at 178, which is really, really small. He would need to run very, very fast and put up very, very good physical testing numbers to be in a very elite group. And even then, his bucket is kind of small. But in terms of just flat out success, he's got all the tools. And the one thing that I can say that's contrary to that is his height and his weight did not seem to diminish his play style or make him a bad bet in college at all. It did not hinder him from producing and averaging a very large portion of Penn State's offense. So for me, if he's on the correct team and he has the correct draft capital, he's somebody that I think is an absolute probably a higher end than a dart throw in the third round, and somebody that I'm really happy to get at the 303 there. I think his production speaks for itself. It's just going to be a matter of where the team or where NFL teams value him and in what round.
So first of all, he's 5'9". He's not 5'11". But is there any concern to you whatsoever for KJ Hamler with that size? I mean, because I know you said that it didn't hinder him at all whatsoever in college and stuff, and which I do agree with you. He was fantastic for Penn State. And he was like our saving grace on a lot of plays, on a lot of big games. You know, there's a lot of times last year where, you know, we'd be behind by like a touchdown or something like that, and we're just like, man, we just need like one KJ Hamler play away from making this a game. And he delivered tons of times for us with, you know, long bomb touchdowns or catching the first down or doing whatever he needed to do to help us win the games. And I love KJ Hamler for it. When I looked at his size and comparables in the NFL with other players his size, you know, there's a lot of busts. You know, his one comparison on NFL.com is Tavon Austin. So guys like that. But then there's also, you know, Antonio Brown's not that far away from him. Height, weight. T.Y. Hilton isn't that far away from him. John Brown isn't that far away from him. Do you see him more as a category of those three guys? Maybe not so much AB, but, you know, a John Brown or T.Y. Hilton versus a Tavon Austin or a Percy Harvin or somebody like that?
Yeah, his profile, his analytical profile tells us he probably leans more towards the latter in terms of guys that that really produce. In terms, I don't think we're talking about an Antonio Brown level type of guy, but a T.Y. Hilton-ish, John Brown-ish. Yeah, definitely his production profile screams that he's capable of achieving those levels of production. But and I've had this discussion with a couple people in terms of the way that we go about looking at wide receivers with this stature, this height, and this weight. And when we look at historical samples, it's kind of hard. I'm not looking for him to be Tyreek Hill, who's 5'10" and 185 pounds. I'm not saying that he's going to come in and be a Tyreek Hill, but how many of those wide receivers in that historical sample are wide receivers that the league felt was a prototype of an X-style receiver, which was very prevalent in the league 10 years ago? You wanted to get that big body X wide receiver for, you know, you to throw the ball 50 yards down the field and go up and chuck it. We are now in an NFL that deploys more spread style schemes in terms of college formations. Wide receivers with smaller statures who are quick, that can run out of the slot, run a plethora of routes from that area, are being more and more sought after now. So I think the game's changed, and those samples get kind of diluted when we look at, you know, how many of those receivers were taken by necessity for teams that really just absolutely thought that a wide receiver under 6'3" and under 200 pounds was going to be, you taking them early is the death of your team. When we've seen guys like Tyreek Hill, T.Y. Hilton, John Brown, these guys that are speedsters, be able to take the top off a defense and, you know, change the course of a game with one play, you know? So I'd venture to say, and I haven't done any deep studies on it or anything, but I'd venture to say that those samples can be a little bit diluted if we're looking, you know, past 10 to 15 years, even probably past 5 years into the past with guys that that are successes and busts. So I don't know how much you want to weight that, but guys like KJ Hamler do have success in today's NFL, and they do it with teams that are willing to deploy that speed element. So there's a path to success for him, whether there's a lot of busts or not. The game has changed, and I think players of his stature and his size are becoming more and more a focal point of offenses that do deploy these college spread schemes and have more than just three wide receivers on the field at one time. So there's a path to success for him. It's just going to come down to what team really kind of believes in him and the situation he walks into.
Anything that is in support of my wide receiver one, KJ Hamler, in this class is I'm in. I'm about that life. I don't have him wide receiver one. I'm just saying I love him that much. But so we're up right now, 403, last pick for us. Anthony McFarland, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Tyler Johnson, Darrington Evans, Thaddeus Moss, Salvin Ahmad, Jared Pinkney, Hunter Bryant, Jake Fromm, Cole Kmet, Colin Johnson were the players that went since KJ Hamler. So I guess there's not a whole lot of players on this list here, but I know who you're going to pick here at the 403.
It's weird because it's like, now looking at the end of this, it's like, man, you probably should have grabbed Keyshawn Vaughn somewhere or something, you know, like to get that running back, you know, kind of sprinkled in there. But we're kind of left in the dust here. I'm definitely not taking DJ Dallas. That's an absolute dart throw. Van Jefferson, neither an underperformer. LaMichael Pirine, good passing upside, but not a guy I want to spend anything on right now. The the only thing is that there's just one guy that kind of just pops up here, and he's got an elite level production profile, but he has just not been able to test. He had the foot issue at the combine, and that's Bryan Edwards. Young breakout age, really, really good analytical profile in terms of, I mean, he competed with Deebo Samuel, and they kind of ate at each other in the time there when Deebo was healthy and Bryan Edwards was able to play with him. I believe it was 2 seasons off the top of my head that they were actually able to play with each other. And they did kind of cannibalize each other in terms of yards and touchdowns a little bit. But the fact that he was able to play and compete, and in, I believe in one season, in a case of overall yardage, was able to beat out a guy like Deebo Samuel there. And at a younger age as well, for him to be able to do that presents a really good positive intuitive floor for me. So that says that he can definitely go into the NFL in an NFL wide receiver room and compete with NFL wide receivers. We all know how much everybody loved Deebo Samuel coming out. And once he got drafted to the Niners, I believe he didn't really go later than, I want to say, the early second round, maybe a little bit later if I could be a little bit off there. But either way, Bryan Edwards is my guy here, and he's more than a dart throw. He's got a ton of upside there based on the production that we saw. Again, this is another guy like kind of KJ Hamler that's going to come down to where do NFL teams value him, and is he going to have a chance to use that production profile appropriately in the NFL?
Fantastic stuff. I think he's a fantastic dart throw in the end of your third rounds, or even if you get him at all in any of the fourth round picks, he'd be a guy that I'd be. If you have like a late fourth, I'd be looking to trade up for, especially with the other players that we had going at the end of the draft there. Guys like you said, DJ Dallas and some of the other tight ends and stuff, or Jacob Eason, stuff like that. So I think Bryan Edwards could, have the potential to be a late round dart throw in these rookie drafts, much like Kenny Golladay was a couple years ago. And that's kind of similar mold. So I like it a lot. And we ended our first draft here out of the 3 spot with CeeDee Lamb, Denzel Mims, KJ Hamler, and Bryan Edwards, all wide receivers. But that is kind of your forte here. So maybe we can get some more running backs into the mix here on our second mock draft. So what position do you want to draft out of here? I know we were talking a little bit before. Do you want to do 7? 7 sound good?
Yeah, I think we do 7 or 8. That's fine. 7. Let's do 7.
Bam. Bam.
See how this thing unfolds. I think middle of the first is probably where some people have questions.
So Burrow went 3. CeeDee Lamb, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Burrow, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, and Jerry Jeudy. I feel like that's a fantastic spot for us to now be picking here at the 107 with a new group of guys we didn't talk about last draft. Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, T. Higgins. I'm assuming those are who you're going to be deciding between here. Henry Ruggs is still there as well too.
That's not my guy, but
sorry. For the audience's point, Henry Ruggs is still there at the 107.
Absolutely. So I would say at 107 right now, just looking at the way the board kind of fell, I see 2 wide receivers that I have in that tier 1 with CeeDee Lamb right now. And then I see a tier 2 running back. And then that's kind of all that's appealing to me right now. So right here, I have a tough decision to make. Right here, it's going to be between Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. And that is going to be probably, if you're sitting in the middle of the first round and this situation presents itself, I think you are going to have a little bit of a tough time. I think Jalen Reagor was kind of the belle of the ball before the combine happened, and he ran that 4.47 or 4.48, I believe. And then we kind of saw Justin Jefferson sneak up on us. Right here, I'm going to go with the guy that I think has the higher floor, and I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson. An age 19 breakout, a guy that averaged 29.8% dominator. He averaged his best season was a 30.7 dominator, and his last season, which is the 2 that we have logged the highest, is 29% dominator rating. And I bring those 2 up because not only was he able to have to log 30.7% of the offense, but he did it with last year when Joe Burrow was just coming into the system. They were learning how to revamp the offense, and he had a really, really big breakout year in his sophomore year. But then his junior year happens, and Joe Burrow happens, and he explodes. And not only does Joe Burrow explode, but he takes Jamar Chase on the ride with him. But the thing that people, a lot of people were raving about Jamar Chase, and I think Justin Jefferson was looked at as the secondary option there, but Justin Jefferson has absolutely kind of like weathered the storm there. He survived and had a significant portion of LSU's offense in a down year, but then when the team went all the way up, he absolutely maintained, only lost about give or take 1% of the overall receiving production for LSU there. This year, when Joe Burrow's throwing for over 6,050 touchdowns and just absolutely going bananas, and he did it while Jamar Chase was exploding next to him as well. The chicken or the egg is the question. Which one came first? Was it Joe Burrow? Were these wide receivers good, or did Joe Burrow kind of elevate them? Well, that's when we looked to last year. Justin Jefferson maintained a large portion of the offense despite Joe Burrow not being very good last year. So that tells me two things: that when the offense is down, Justin Jefferson is commanding opportunity. He's commanding production when he's on the field, and he's doing it with authority. And then when the team is all the way up, he's commanding the same amount, maybe just a sliver less, while another player is commanding another significant amount on the same team, and he's still maintaining value in production and opportunity. So that tells me that as right from the jump, in terms of age-adjusted metrics, production profile, breakout age, everything that we use as indicators that a wide receiver can succeed, Justin Jefferson hits and checks the box. And it tells me that when he walks into a wide receiver room in the NFL, it does not matter who is going to be there, that his floor is a wide receiver 2 and a strong wide receiver 2 in fantasy. So that's for me. And that's what I want to see above a guy like Jalen Reagor, who I think has a higher ceiling, who might be a little bit more scheme dependent in terms of where what system is going to utilize his overall skill set and where his draft capital ultimately lands. I think Justin Jefferson absolutely solidified himself as a potential wide receiver that's going to go in the first round and the back half of that first round. I think a team is going to want to pull the trigger on him. And if you give him first round draft capital, I don't see how you can not have him within your top 3 wide receivers off the jump. And he should be a locked and loaded first round pick in your rookie drafts.
So Peter has been in our chat this entire time. And he literally has just been making comments to everything that you say. And it's absolutely hilarious.
Everything is wrong.
And he finally ended it with, y'all don't engage with the audience much, huh? And it's just, I'm looking at all this stuff. I
can't see you, Peter.
What if a wide receiver gets drafted to the Patriots? We need a team love per draft round metric. Hamler to the rescue. This is a small wide receiver class. Will being short help KJ duck the coronavirus? Hamler's AB. That's a strong take. Taking RBs is only a third pick and more valuable than running backs. Weird. Go running back.
What did he say? What was the last one he said? Bryan Edwards is only a little bit what?
Bryan Edwards is only a third round pick and more valuable than running backs. Weird.
He could be. That's probably in the heat of the moment, though, Peter. I think if we would have just kind of dialed it in a little bit more on that last draft, I think we would have slowed it down and not just went with guys that we really liked at the top of the board. Maybe we would have grabbed the running back, but Peter and his antics. Peter,
he's out here. He even dropped us a little hat tip gif in the chat too. So
he's a goat. Peter's a goat. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
So we're now the 207 here. Jalen Reagor went right after us. Then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, Michael Pittman, A.J. Dillon, T. Higgins, Henry Ruggs, Tua, Denzel Mims, Laviska, and Zach Moss. So we are now looking at there's a lot of quarterbacks right here. Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Keyshawn Vaughn, Eno Benjamin, AGG, Brandon Ayuk. We can keep going down here, but I feel like I just read off one of your picks.
Oh, yes, this is actually a little bit more dicey than the last one. We definitely saw, like I said, we see that cliff kind of after Denzel Mims. I really don't want to get too much of Zach Moss here. And I really don't. I feel like grabbing a quarterback and here in a one quarterback is just kind of a reach. Like I feel like unless you are absolutely starving for quarterback, unless you have like right now, your only two quarterbacks are like Dwayne Haskins and I don't know, Dwayne Haskins and Teddy Bridgewater. In that situation, maybe we roll with a guy like, Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts here. But we're gonna keep this thing light and we're gonna go with skill position again. Something tells me I really want to take Keyshawn Vaughn, but I don't know if I value him more than I value Benjamin. And these two are going to be guys that are very draft cap dependent, very dependent. The running back position is in general, but this is going to be even more dependent on where they're going to go. Right now, I would probably give the nod to. Let's go. What did Peter say? Something?
No. It's just
you're just laughing at me.
Yep.
I am had because this 207. This is where you got to get a little bit. This is where you get methodical.
Would this be a place that you'd be looking to trade back or trade up?
Potentially would probably look to trade up because I feel like that dart throw season gets comes a little bit soon after the 203 probably. Can you look at the other picks that happened before this real quick? What they were?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we're looking at right after Denzel Mims and Laviska Shenault. Like Zach Moss isn't really on my radar right now, but I would prefer Moss to. I'd probably prefer him to a guy like. No, I prefer Keyshawn Vaughn, so that's a lie. Yeah. After Laviska, that's a drop off for me there. I would. So right now, if we got a stick and pick here, I'm definitely going to go with. We're going to go ahead and grab Keyshawn Vaughn. We'll do the running back, the running backs matter crowd. Happy. We'll go with Keyshawn Vaughn. I like Keyshawn Vaughn. I think most of what I really like about Keyshawn Vaughn is the receiving upside. So excuse me, I just spaced there. He's a wide receiver that has not wide receiver. He is a running back that definitely had some really good receiving upside in this class. I believe he averaged about give or take a slightly over 15% of the receiving yards market share as a running back, which is on the very high end. It's comparative to, we look at guys who kind of spiked in that area. J.K. Dobbins averaged about 12, Cam Akers about 14. DeAndre Swift DeAndre Swift and, Benjamin are the only two running backs that actually averaged more on a per year basis for him. And Keyshawn's a guy that actually continued to do it through two schools as well. So he's somebody that, I think that in today's game is somebody that can definitely hold his own. He's somebody that I think that has a really, really good upside at the running back position. But like I said, before we even picked him and comparative to Benjamin, these are two guys that are going to be really scheme dependent in terms of where they land and in terms of the draft capital that they garner. But we did see him kind of explode once he left Illinois, went to Vanderbilt, logged 2 seasons over 1,000 rushing yards. It wasn't a running back that required a ton of volume. I don't think he ever had over 200 rush attempts there when playing at Vanderbilt. I think in his entire career, I don't think he ever had over 200 rush attempts, but we did see him kind of spike in terms of overall total touchdowns, 14 in 2018, 10 in 2019. But overall, I think he's a guy that has more upside than probably Benjamin, who I know teams were pretty much off of coming into the combine. He weighed fairly well, but I dropped those guys into kind of the same success bucket right now. But Keyshawn Vaughn, it was pretty much between him, Benjamin, and Antonio Gandy Golden, and I might get shot in the foot later if AGG does somehow garner day 1 or 2 draft capital. He would probably be the best bet in that scenario. But Keyshawn Vaughn definitely has a lot of good data points to go on in terms of what we want from the running back.
All right, so I got two comments here for you, Jesse, both from our live stream over on Facebook from Lawrence Chi. The first thing he said was Brandon Ayuk here. Was he not on your radar here? Because I know you said it was AJG would have been your wide receiver pick.
Yeah, AGG definitely would have been my wide receiver pick. And Brandon Ayuk is somebody that I'm not. He's probably an end of the third, fourth round kind of guy. I think he's being taken right now in a little too high. He's a guy that came out of junior college. Succeeded there, but the moment that he stepped onto the field for Arizona State, he was really, really overshadowed by N'Keal Harry. And we know the elite level profile that N'Keal Harry had coming out of Arizona State last year. He was really overshadowed by N'Keal Harry, but not just overshadowed in the sense like he didn't perform behind him. He absolutely just underperformed in general. And call that first year playing in a Power 5 conference, first year being in an actual D1 school. I don't know what you want to call it, but I can't go off of what did or didn't happen. Nevertheless, he only had 33 receptions for 474 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns in 2018. But then he just somehow, as soon as N'Keal Harry leaves, he absolutely explodes this year for 65 receptions, 1,100 receiving yards, over 1,100 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. So where a lot of what we see in his analytical profile, where the value comes from is that last year. And I think we've learned to be a little bit weary of these flash in the pan wide receivers, and especially ones that they don't perform behind an elite level receiver. So N'Keal Harry, elite level profile coming out of college. And I know we haven't seen it flash in the NFL yet. Call that what you want, but Brandon Ayuk not being able to perform with him or to that level kind of tells us that it tells me at least he's definitely a guy that's not on my radar anywhere before the first 3 rounds. I don't trust those flash in the pants. Call them, kind of Hakeem Butlers, whatever you want to call them. I know that might hurt some feelings there, but be wary about these guys that only have one season to show of success and then are entering the NFL. Because the fact of the matter is he's got an age 21 breakout, and his college dominator does not. It tells you that he garnered a large portion of Arizona State's offense. But when you break that down and you look at where he did it, how old he was when he did it, he's coming in as an older wide receiver. He didn't do anything either at the combine in terms of 40-yard time or 40 time speed score, anything. He just grades out unfavorably for me in that aspect. And I don't think that he's somebody that I want to invest anything in the first 2.5 rounds in terms of my draft capital. I'm looking to actually hit on receivers. So Brandon Ayuk is a guy that I'm going to stay away from.
All right. So then the other question here, again from Lawrence, in tight end premium or mandatory start 2 tight end leagues, where would you slide the tight ends? I know just looking at the list here of all the guys that on the top of the rankings here, 4 of the top 6 are tight ends, and Bryson Hopkins actually went at the 302 a couple of picks before us. So, and just a regular 1 tight end, no premium leagues, this seems to be about the spot where you can start looking at the tight ends, the Bryants or Thaddeus Moss or Albert O isn't even on this list, I don't think. In a tight end premium or start 2 tight end leagues, where would you be looking to take some of these tight ends here?
Probably where I'm sitting at the 307, anywhere in the early third. If I'm absolutely having to start that tight end, or even in a tight end premium, and this is a pretty weak tight end class, we didn't get a lot of absolute performers. I'd say probably my 2 guys right now are Hunter Bryant and Albert O. I do like excuse me, not Hunter Bryant, Harrison Bryant. Those 2 they always flip in my mind. Harrison Bryant, and then I would probably say Albert O. So Albert O displayed some really elite level metrics at the combine, or testing numbers at the combine, I should say. And he kind of showed us that he's definitely got the speed. He's definitely got what it takes to be a coveted tight end in the league. I think some team is going to get pretty fascinated with the fact that he ran a 4.49 at 6'6", 258 pounds. That's elite level right there. And in terms of his college dominator, in terms of his age-adjusted metrics, those are always good to see. We see his college dominator 24.1. We see his breakout age. Depending on where you have the thresholds, I know I was always taught to have it about 15% because the amount of volume and production that a tight end gets in college is lesser than a wide receiver. So at about 15%, his breakout age would be 19. Somebody that I really like, Albert O, is a guy that I think has a really solid upside. Has some really solid upside in terms of the tight end position. But Harrison Bryant is probably my pick here. Even despite what we were talking about in a start tight end league, I actually like probably throwing a tight end into the mix here at 307. But in terms of that question directly, it kind of falls in line. This is probably where I'm looking to grab a tight end in a start 2 tight end league too.
All righty, good deal. So yeah, we're looking at the 307. Did you want to take Bryant here?
Yeah, two birds, one stone, baby. I do. Yeah. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, no. I was like, you know what? I could tie this in. I could tie this in really well. 307 would take a tight end here, answer the guy's question. Let's get must see TV. Yeah, we're taking Tyler Johnson, bro. Yeah, we're gonna take that guy. I don't really know if there's anything else you need to say. Age 19 breakout, by far the highest producing wide receiver in this class, and in terms of averages, in terms of sustainability, it is really it's Tyler Johnson. Excuse me. It's Tyler Johnson in this class, and Tyler Johnson pretty much just reigns supreme over every single wide receiver in this class, even CeeDee Lamb from a production standpoint. The highest average dominator, 39.9 over a 3-year span. There just wasn't really a year where he wasn't dominating from the wide receiver position, except for his freshman season. He is literally the guy in this class, and he is going to grade out very, very well. The issue is we didn't get to see him at the combine. We didn't get to see him play at the Senior Bowl. Apparently there was he didn't get invited, or he did get invited, didn't accept. He was in the East-West Shrine game. He bowed out of that, and then he bowed out of testing at the combine. The thing about Tyler Johnson right now is this whole entire evaluation process and scouting process has not favored him. I don't know what his camp has been telling him to do. I don't know why they're not allowing him to test a little bit more. He's not going to test out and be an absolute fast wide receiver, but I don't think that would hurt his draft stock in general with the production that we've seen at Minnesota. He's also a guy that did this over the past 2 seasons while Rashad Bateman was breaking out. And Rashad Bateman is going to be a guy that a lot of people are on next year. We're going to be on this same exact stream next year talking about Rashad Bateman and how he performed next to Tyler Johnson for the Gophers. So for me, I think Tyler Johnson is about as solid as you can get. He would probably be a first-round wide receiver had he put some sort of athletic testing number together, if he gave teams some sort of basis to go on. But even prior to the combine, prior to the athletic testing numbers, prior to everything that had happened over the past couple months, he was a guy that scouts and analytics did not seem to agree on. They did not seem to think that his performance and his overall production kind of matched what people saw on the field. And if you're looking at just raw numbers in general, you'd probably be fooled as well in terms of what he actually displayed in terms of production. I believe his sophomore season, that Gophers team threw for about 9 touchdowns, and Tyler Johnson accounted for 7 of those. And that definitely boosted his overall dominator that year and his overall production metrics that year. When we're talking, see, even my dog Charger doesn't agree with the scouts' takes on raw metrics. But if you're just looking at the raw statistics there, you would see he accounted for 77% of the touchdowns there, and that boosted that completely boosted his analytical profile for that year, but when you're catching 7 of 9 touchdowns throughout an entire year, that tells me that in the red zone or just in general, when they're looking for big plays or however you want to look at it, he was the guy that was scoring the touchdowns there. It was nobody else. There was maybe 1 or 2 other people that had those other 2 touchdowns, which is a big deal. It tells me that even if the offensive output for a wide receiver or the offensive output for a team is low, the reason why these age-adjusted metrics matter is because we can look at what percentage of the overall output and production from a team that one player has, and when they surpass the thresholds that we look for in them, it tells us that they're able. It doesn't matter whether the offense scored 1,000 yards or 10,000, or whether they threw for 10,000 yards or they threw for 1,000 yards. When a player has 50% of that overall receiving production, that's a big deal. It tells us that that was the player that was dominating everything around them. So. From that lens, Tyler Johnson looks like an absolute stud and someone that you probably can't miss with, but there's very big questions on whether or not he is going to be able to have the draft capital to back him up, and that's the biggest issue right now. However, in the 3rd round, I'm taking him, and I'm happy about it. I'm not worried about it. It's a dart throw at that point. Anything past that 212, you're going to get dicey in this class, so I'm cool with it.
Awesome. I love Tyler Johnson a lot too. I know you and I have agreed on that, and we also don't like how his stock has just dropped tremendously. He was a guy that I think a lot of people had him as the wide receiver 1 in this class before the 2019 season started, and now he's down here in the middle of the 3rd round, just chilling. So yeah, it does definitely suck, but that's also a potential for you guys to be able to, hop on that. A guy that a lot of people like coming into the season. He did nothing in season production wise to make you think otherwise of him. And now he's down here in the 3rd round and might be a late round stud if you can get him that late. So we're up again at the 407. I feel like I know your pick here. So just to read through the names who went: Thaddeus Moss, Salvin Ahmad, Jared Pinkney, Hunter Bryant, Jordan Love, Cole Kmet, Jake Fromm, Colin Johnson, LaMichael Pirine, DJ Dallas, and Brian Edwards right before us again. So you couldn't get him in the 4th again. But 407, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, we almost just took this guy in the last round and passed up on Tyler Johnson, but thank goodness we didn't. Yeah, we're gonna go Harrison Bryant here, and I was kind of talking him up a minute ago. I'll kind of brush over that again too before throw it back to you, but. 25.7% college dominator. He's got an age 19 breakout, I believe. And yeah, age 19 breakout was when he surpassed the 15% threshold of the overall, the overall production over there at Florida Atlantic. So for me, kind of how we were talking about Albert O and in terms of what we look for from the tight end position, I really think that Harrison Bryant is a guy who has the production profile, and he's somebody that we're talking coming off of 65 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's a big role for a tight end to have in terms of production inside of an offense. So anytime we see that, that's a really, really big deal. The year that he broke out, 2017, at age 19, 32 receptions for 408 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. And he's kind of just progressed every year since then. So 2018, 662 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. When we see the receiving yards kind of continue to rise, and then we see him skyrocket for over 1,000 yards, that's just an absolute major, major plus. He averaged over 14.4 yards per reception. I know that that's not super, that's like running back yards per carry or whatever. But when we look at things like that for the tight end position, it's good to throw in a little bit of context. Definitely grades out favorably for this tight end class in terms of the involvement. We're looking at probably an average of 3.7 receptions per game, which tells us he's definitely targeted in the passing game. He's not just an inline tight end that's going to be used for blocking and then somehow kind of leaks into the field and a quarterback is looking to kind of dump off to him. No, he's running routes and he's being significant in the offense, which is good. From your fantasy tight ends, this is what you want. I think there was some somewhat of an issue last year when we were talking about when we were talking about, I can't remember his name right now. Iowa tight end, when we had the duo, it was Noah Fant and TJ.
Hawkinson.
I can't. Yes, Hawkinson. That's what it is. TJ Hawkinson. It was TJ. TJ Hawkinson was known for being a really good dual threat tight end. So he was an inline blocker, but he was also a guy that could catch. A lot of people had a little bit of concern when it came to, is he going to be relegated to that inline blocking tight end in the NFL? We see that that's not really how it panned out, and TJ was a really, really good get for a lot of owners in their fantasy drafts. But Hunter Bryant here just giving us a lot to go on that says that he's definitely not that. He's definitely not going to be relegated to just being an inline tight end, and has the outside of Chase Claypool, who we're probably looking at a tight end designation, not exactly sure yet, but outside of him and Josiah DeGuara out of Cincinnati, we're looking at Harrison Bryant and DeGuara as the two highest performing tight ends in terms of age adjusted, or in terms of market share and college dominator as a tight end. So that bodes really well for them. Didn't do anything spectacular in terms of athletic testing numbers. Ran a 4.73, 65th percentile. The dude's 6'5", 243 pounds. Not running like Albert O, but I think we'd like to see a little bit better of athletic testing numbers from him. But like I said earlier when we were talking about KJ Hamler, didn't really seem to hinder him from being targeted and a force at Florida Atlantic. So somebody I'm more than willing to grab here in the 4th round, somebody I'm excited to get, and I think he'd be a great addition, especially if you're kind of lacking at that tight end position. Maybe you got some older guys sitting on the roster and you want to get a good young guy in there as a mix for your build.
All righty, fantastic stuff, Jesse. So we ended our 4-round rookie draft here out of the 107 with Justin Jefferson and Keyshawn Vaughn, Tyler Johnson, and Harrison Bryant, the Florida Atlantic tight end. So I think that's a fantastic haul out of the 107, and I think you cleared up or at least gave some people some things to think about when you're looking at some of these picks and stuff, especially when you're at the 107, thinking between guys like Justin Jefferson, Jalen Reagor, or one of the other running backs that fell to you. As well as, looking at, the 207, there was not really a whole lot there. So that might be a position where you might want to try and trade up to hope that somebody falls to you, like a T. Higgins or a LaVisca or somebody like that along those lines, or a Denzel Mims, all those kind of players, instead of trying to get, potentially stuck with a player that you don't really like. So
I want to chime in. I want to chime in there too, because I will throw this in as well and say that the drop off, if you saw like the Keyshawn Vaughn, and is there any way you can go back to that, or probably not? Even if you can't, either way, okay. So the drop off for me between guys like Denzel Mims and T. Higgins and even Laviska Shenault, the drop off there between those guys and a guy like Keyshawn Vaughn at the 207 is really, really significant. So if you can, and you're thinking about trading up, nobody after Keyshawn Vaughn is somebody that just piques my interest. Absolutely. I'd be willing to package that 3rd and 4th round and maybe a 2021 pick, maybe a 2021 second or something like that to move up to early, maybe the 202, 203 in this range where Denzel Mims, Henry Ruggs, T. Higgins are, and see if I can snag one of those guys. And even though I'm losing those dart throws in rounds 3 and 4, I'm getting much more solid studs to pair with Justin Jefferson in a guy like T. Higgins or Denzel Mims. And I'd be perfectly comfortable walking out of there with Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins, or Justin Jefferson and Denzel Mims, and not even having to worry about the dart throws later. That's just me. I'd be perfectly comfortable doing that. But like you said, I think we got a really good haul there. I think Justin Jefferson, Keyshawn Vaughn, Tyler Johnson, and Harrison Bryant, if you want to stick and pick, that's a really, really good haul to come out of, and to come out of your draft with. And you kind of hit every single mark there too, with grabbing 2 wide receivers, a running back, and a tight end. I think you make out really nice there.
Yeah, fantastic stuff again. So, Jesse, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the drafting lessons and doing our first 2 rookie mock drafts here. It was fantastic stuff. I know that you have really come into your own as a rookie analyst type of guy here, doing a lot of fantastic work. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of plug away, where people can find you, what to expect from you coming up here. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, dude. First and foremost, thank you for lending me your platform, man. Anytime we can chat. I know we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, dude. We're always talking. We're always in the DMs, dude. I'm always like, dude, hey, how can we do this? So, me coming into my own has definitely had something to do with the nurturing of people around me. You are one of those people around me. So thank you so much for allowing me to come on and be a part of your your rookie mock today, or tonight, I should say. So right now I'm just kind of like scatterbrained. I'm learning so much stuff in quarantine right now. I'm teaching myself machine learning. I'm doing stuff that's unnecessary, things that I'm just trying to get better at, that I now have time to try and get better at. So, but mostly you can find any of my written work over at playerprofiler.com or at Roto Underworld. That's where most of my written work is based out of. So any article I write or anything will be out of there. You can find all of my work. Anything that I do will be primarily on Twitter. So at Jesse Reeves FF. I have it pinned right here in the little thing right there. It's right there. Look, you can go there. That's where you can go, right there. Anything you can check out anything that I do over there. I have a lot of cool stuff coming out right now. I have some rookie profiles that will be coming out in terms of written content over the next couple weeks. I do have a pretty ambitious and big project that I am working on right now called the Rookie Index. I'm very excited to plug that here right now because that's going to be something that's going to be very special. And I'm excited to do. And it will pretty much be exactly what we just did, except it will be my own rankings. It will have all the age-adjusted market share numbers. It will have athletic testing numbers. It will have really, really cool visuals in terms of hit rates for running backs, wide receivers. It will have overall profiles for what I would consider to be the top 30 overall fantasy projection fantasy players in this class, and it's going to be laid out as a guide for just a really cool spot where you can go. And the goal is to give you information that's actionable as well as descriptive and let you kind of digest it and help you throughout your rookie process. So kind of exactly what we just did now, except in a form of kind of like a guide. So that's something I'm really excited about, have that coming out. And you guys can also catch me if you're interested. I also have a podcast where I do some of this similar work too. It's called The Draft Dialogue. Amazing co-host Matt Gujeski. And we go live on Twitch at least once a week, and we do probably anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hour show, and we just tackle a bunch of profiles on this rookie class, and then we cut them up and we put them into videos on YouTube, and then we also throw that into a podcast feed. So go to Apple Podcasts, anywhere you have your podcast, look up The Draft Dialogue, and we have about 40 to 45 episodes up there right now that are all just individual player profilers. So in between that, the rookie index, written work, everything, I'm killing myself, but I'm having fun doing it. So, dude, again, thank you so much for lending me your platform. I really appreciate you letting me come on here and talk, dude.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And hey, Jesse's been kind enough to give me a little inside look into some of the player profiles that he's been putting together for his guide, and it's fantastic stuff. I would highly recommend looking for that whenever it does drop. You have a date for that, right?
I do. It was going to be April 6th. Plot twist. I'll just say it, right now we are, with everything that's been going on with the coronavirus and everything, having my kids home and stuff, I am putting a little bit of extra time in the family. So I have decided to push it back a week. So I believe that's April 13th, to just give me a little bit of extra time to dial in everything for you guys. I'm trying not to be a perfectionist, but I do have a lot of stuff that I am cramming into this, and working on a lot of analytical stuff behind the scenes. So just to make sure it's up to par with how I want it, I am pushing it back 1 week. But yeah, I believe that's going to be April 13th, if I remember correctly.
There you go. So if you wanted to be sure that you can find the information for that, definitely make sure that you hit up Jesse on Twitter, follow him, and especially everything that he said. It's fantastic stuff. He's put in a ton of work this offseason, so I recommend checking out everything that he's thrown out there this whole entire draft season. So I just want to say, again, thank you, Jesse, for coming on, and then also thank all of you guys for tuning in and watching this. If you're looking at it from Twitch, from Facebook, from YouTube, where this is going to go on, as soon as this stream is done. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and catching us here tonight. So just real quick, I want to make sure that all of you guys make sure that you're following us on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/Dynasty League Football, where I do this show every single Monday. We have the DLF mailbag show with Chris Allen and Adam Wilde, and then also some rookie film study with Ray Garvin. And then we also have some other stuff in terms of merch, some DLF merchandise and other not so DLF merchandise, including that Ray GQ hotcakes and Henny t-shirt. I don't know if you saw that, Jesse. That was fire.
Yeah, that dude. Hey, Ray is everywhere, man. He's killing the game right now. Get you a Henny and hotcake shirt.
Yeah, so that link is going to be posted here soon. I've been doing a lot of work on that one with Ken Moody from DLF. So we've been putting in some time on that website to get it ready for you guys. So yeah, thank you guys so much again for watching, tuning in, and we will catch you guys next week with another episode of Drafting Lessons. See ya.